Hey guys, I'm feeling nice and toasty. I hope you guys are too. I'm warm here in the kitchen because I'm cooking up a whole load of winter warmers just for you. So here are my Wok Wednesday winter warmers. Now some of you may have seen on TV with Ainsley a few weeks ago that we did a lamb rendang. So here is the full-on recipe for how to make my lamb rendang. This is a low and slow kind of dish, so you want to start with your paste, get that going, and then get the paste cooking away before you then toast off the coconut and do anything else. And you know, it's going to take a good sort of 3 hours to cook this lamb rendang through. You want to let it cook for as long as possible. My shallots, these are Thai shallots. They've been soaked in hot water for sort of 15 minutes or so. And that just helps to peel the shallots nice and easily. If you don't have shallots, or if you can't find Thai shallots, which are slightly sweeter than your classic red onion, you can of course swap it out with red onion or normal shallots. Anything like that works absolutely fine. So once you've peeled all your shallots, then you can just give them a very rough smash. This is all going to go into the pestle and mortar anyway. We'll give it a rough chop in a second. Now give them a rough chop. Once you've got all your anger out on your shallots, and hopefully all your shallots aren't on the floor like mine.
Get all your anger out from not getting business class.
What's that? Everything's going to go into the pestle and mortar anyway. So you roughly chopped is fine, but you do want to sort of start it off, and you can do this in a food processor, this first bit, but you must still give the spices a really good pounding to get all the sort of juices and then, you know, the nutrients and the flavour out of there. Garlic. Two or three cloves. Much like cooking any sort of curry base or curry paste, you're probably going to make way too much of this, and you can make your paste and then freeze it either in ice cube trays or just on a nice sort of thinly on a tray. Once it's frozen, if you're using a tray, just sort of break it up into little bits so you can use a little bit at a time whenever you want, and then you've only done this sort of job once. You should get a few curries out of this. I quite like a good amount of paste in my rendang. It's where all the flavour is. Roughly chopped. That joins the shallots. Got some turmeric here. You don't need a lot. This is fresh turmeric. You could swap this out with some powder. But fresh turmeric's got that great, almost sweet, bittersweet flavour. It's not only great for colour, but good for flavour too. I tend not to sort of touch it too much if I can, because that will really stain your hands. Lemongrass we're going to bash out as well, and I really love this type of cooking because you can put some music on, relax. I really enjoy being in the kitchen. Everything about this lamb rendang is so slow and warm and wintry. A nice finely chopped lemongrass into the paste as well. And this other lemongrass here, I'm going to use, but I'm just going to bash it out in a nice relaxed manner. We've got some galangal here, which is sort of a sweeter version of ginger. It's got really citrusy flavour to it. Just take the skin off. You can't really bash galangal, it's very, very sort of solid. So just finely slice that and then dice that as fine as you can. And that lovely sort of sweet citrus aroma adds a lot to your curry paste. If you can't find galangal, just swap it out with some ginger. This is something that if you put a whole round of this into a food processor, it will just keep sort of pinging around like a ball. So even if you're using a food processor, you would have to chop it off roughly first. Galang out, straight in. And the last bit we're going to put into the paste is these whole dried red chilies. They've been soaked in hot water as well for about 15-20 minutes, just to soften them up. Okay, so that's all the hard work done, aside from the pounding. Time for some muscle. Now there's no special technique to this, you just gotta keep going. But you wanna go into it and really bring out all the juices and oils of those spices. It should take about 10 to 15 minutes. Now my poor sister, she's been doing cookery classes for her friends during lockdown. And she took one of my recipes, I think it was a Thai green curry. And she said her friends' pestle and morses were about this big. So it took them about 45 minutes to make their Thai green curry paste. They were incredibly hungry by about 9 p.m. If you have a pestle and mortar that size, I'd highly recommend putting it into a food processor and then adding some oil into that food processor, and you'll get a similar sort of paste. It won't be quite the same, but it will still taste good. These are optional, but little tricks that I like to do to bring out that deep savoury flavour even more is add a whole lot of these crispy fried onions into the paste as well. And that just brings out that sort of deep savoury. And then, I don't always put this in the recipe, but shrimp paste is quite traditional and quite classic to most sort of curry pastes, Malaysian or Indonesian curry pastes. So that teaspoon of that, I don't put it in all the recipes because you can't always find shrimp paste. If you smash those two things into the paste as well, you're going to get this sort of really unique, deep, savoury flavour in the rendang. You can smell those crispy onions in there. Definitely one of my secret ingredients. So once you've got this lovely sort of actual paste and it's not separate sort of finely chopped ingredients anymore, then you're pretty much ready to cook with it. On to the cooking. I've got a nice thick pot here. We're going to cook your paste off first, and then whilst that paste is cooking through, which usually takes a good sort of 8 to 10 minutes, you want to cook it through for a nice amount of time so that it cooks out the rawness, but it sort of brings out all the flavour of those base spices. And whilst that's going, I'm going to start to toast off some desiccated coconut, and this adds a lot of texture to the actual curry. Just in a dry pan, sort of be careful with this. You want to go on a medium to high heat, and it will look like it's doing nothing, and suddenly it'll just start to go sort of golden brown and then burn. So you've got to be quite careful with it, and just keep sort of mixing it around or tossing it through. Once this oil's hot enough, then we're going to start to add your paste. I would say a minimum of 2 to 3 tablespoons of your curry paste needs to go into this for that real flavour. Ah!
Oh no.
We need more coconut. Yeah, let's just concentrate on one thing at a time. So, what you want to do is you want to concentrate on one thing at a time so as not to burn your coconut. Right, now my paste is frying off nice and gently. Don't have to worry about that too much. It's on a low heat. Just, you know, that fragrance really coming off that, but it still sort of smells a little bit raw. I can look after my coconut and not burn it. I highly advise don't do anything else whilst you're cooking your coconut. So it's taken about 6-7 minutes for my coconut to get to this point, but it does need that sort of time to sit and sort of catch a little before you then toss it through again to get a nice sort of almost uniform colour. I'm going to switch this hob off now because that will continue to heat up and cook through. My paste has cooked through nicely, it's sort of stuck to the bottom of the pan, and every few minutes you just want to sort of bring that off. And you can see the sort of oil has split from the paste. And at that point, when you're not smelling any sort of grassiness and you've got that sort of caramelized texture on the paste, we're going to add your meat. You can use diced lamb or beef. You know, secondary cuts of meat are good. So lamb neck fillet or leg or beef skirt, anything like that works. So I'm going to hit the heat up to medium heat now. Just make sure that isn't burning even though it's switched off. So on a medium-high heat, you're sealing that flavour and all those spices around the actual meat. At this point, you can throw in your extra sort of lemongrass, and I've got some kaffir lime leaves here. They're frozen lime leaves, so when they thaw out, they come out nice and fresh. Much better than dry lime leaf. Now when you're cooking any sort of curry like this, having that sort of paste stick at the bottom of the pan is really good. It's going to add flavour. You don't want it to burn, but as I start to add liquid to this curry, all that flavour will lift off and you sort of deglaze that pan. And this is going to cook for quite a few hours, so every time you stir it, you want to leave enough time for it to stick a little on the bottom. Now that my meat's sealed all the way round, I'm going to pour that desiccated coconut in. Just turn the heat down slightly so that that doesn't burn, and then mix that through. And again, that's going to cause even more sticking before I add any liquid. And that mixture of the coconut with those deep fried shallots inside the paste, it's going to give you a really lovely sweet savoury balance. I've got some tamarind here, which just gives it a bit of a sort of natural sour. You don't want it to be in sort of too sour, so 3 tablespoons will do the job. Mix that in. Then we're going to balance that out with a little bit of palm sugar. You can always season it again later, so not too much at this point, just sort of a tablespoon will do. And just sort of melt that through. And then in a second we're going to gradually start to add your coconut milk. And much like cooking a Thai green curry, I'm going to add coconut milk a little bit at a time so it kind of lifts all that flavour off the bottom of the pan, and then eventually over time your coconut, the oil will sort of split from that coconut milk itself. Medium heat, start to add your coconut milk gradually. Give that a stir and then scrape the base of that. It's looking incredible already and smelling just fantastic. A little bit more coconut milk. And then a good scrape again. Once you've got a lot of that sort of base flavour sort of scraped off the bottom of the pan, then you're going to add the rest of the coconut milk. And because this is cooking for a nice long time, we'll pour some chicken stock into this as well. And maybe a little bit of salt at the beginning, and then more salt later on to season it to finish. Now if you don't let your rendang sort of catch like I did there, you just won't get the same colour eventually. Good pinch of salt. And then some chicken stock to keep it going. And if you do need to top it up with a bit more stock or a bit of water, that's absolutely okay. You want to tend to this every sort of 10 to 15 minutes. Keep it on a low sort of simmering temperature. Cook it for at least 2 to 3 hours. Lid on, let that cook. My rendang's been cooking for a good 3 hours now. And you can see how lovely and thick it is. I actually took the lid off for the last sort of 45 minutes, just so that it could evaporate and sort of simmer down and get that thicker sauce that is great for a rendang. You can see the sort of oil sitting at the top of that curry. It means that underneath that flavour is really nice and intense. Just take that last bit of flavour off the bottom of the pan. I'm going to taste this, and I did put some salt in already earlier, so it may not need any more seasoning at all. I'm not going to season that anymore. That is a brilliant flavour. Can taste the base of tamarind, but it's not sour, and the saltiness just really goes through that meat with all those great spices. Time to serve up. Look at that. It's really succulent meat. I've got some coriander just to dress that over the top. Really simple, perfect with some steamed rice or some coconut rice, some veg on the side. Just some sliced cucumber will do just to cut through that. Here's my beef rendang. I've tried a little bit already, but I'm going to try a proper piece. Just melts through. That is absolutely delicious. I can't wait to have a whole bowl. Don't forget, guys, subscribe to our channel for more Asian cooking tutorials, and like.